Hello guys, good day everyone. This is the Creators Lodge and you're welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time coming across my channel, please do well to like this video, do well to subscribe, and please turn on the notification button so when next I upload a tutorial video like this, YouTube will notify you. Alright guys, in today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing us how I created this design and a breakdown of this design. And when you look at this design, you're going to see that the title of the design says prophetic journaling. All right, prophetic journaling. And when you look at the composition of this design, everything speaks about prophetic journaling. The composition of this design. So the composition of this design, everything speaks about prophetic journaling. Now, what is prophetic journaling? Alright, so you need to understand what prophetic journaling is all about so you can effectively understand the elements used or the elements that are used on this design. Now, prophetic journaling, it's very important for everyone, particularly every believer or Christian. It's very important that you take stock of your life, you take inventories of things that happened in your life, all right, in the course of your journey. It's very important that you take note of those key things that happened. Some things happened in your life positively, some things happened in your life negatively. So you take note what happened or what started, what happened or what ended in your life, all right. And you also take note when such thing happened or when such things started or ended in your life. You also take note of where it started, all right, or what you did right that made this thing to start happening in your life, what you did wrong that made this thing to start happening in your life. So let's say, for instance, you are earning 20,000 rand in a month, and when you do certain jobs, the work you do, you don't earn more than 30,000 or 20,000, and then a certain week you discover that you did the same thing that you've been doing, and all of a sudden you made 200,000 from that. All right, you did the same thing that you've been doing, but you made 200,000 from that. Now, the next thing you want to do is to take a journal, what you did right that brought about that increase, that 200,000. Now it's a shift from 20,000 to 200,000. So you need to journal, you need to take notes. Was there something you did right? Was it how you spoke to the client? Was it how you engaged? What did you do right that brought about that increase, that shift in the amount you are earning? In the amount, they would naturally pay you. Clients would naturally pay you 20,000 or 30,000. But all of a sudden, it moved from that same amount to an increase to about 200,000. So you need to journal what you did right so that you can be able to replicate it. So the whole essence or the idea behind prophetic journaling is to help your life to be consistent. So if you are producing a certain result, it helps you to be consistently producing that same result. It helps you to be consistently producing. Okay, let's take for instance, for we here in Nigeria, if you're familiar with this brand called Item 7 or this company called Item 7, all right. So now you'll agree with me that Item 7 have a specific for the food they cook. They have ingredients they use, all right, that makes up they use in cooking that food. And for each of those ingredients, they have each ingredients in different proportion. So let's say they want to put salt in the food. It could be that for for this amount of rice, we're going to use just one, let's say 2 spoons of salt. All right, let me just use that example. I know that 2 spoons is definitely going to be small, but I'm just using that example. So they would most likely have a list that will tell them that, okay, when you are going to cook this amount of rice, this is the amount of salt you should use. When you are going to cook this amount of rice, this is the amount of oil you should use. You shouldn't go beyond this amount of oil. So it will help them not to make mistake, and it will help them to consistently replicate the same result. So if you test their food today and you go back tomorrow to test their food will still taste like what it tasted like yesterday or how it tasted yesterday. So, and the reason why they can sustain that effectively is because they have a documentation. They've documented how much salt should be used for this amount of rice, how much oil should be used for this amount of rice, and on like that. So the same thing for believers and for Christians. Prophetic journaling is important so that you can keep track of your life, things that are going on in your life, what happened that makes that allowed these things to start happening in your life, or what happened that allowed these things to stop happening in your life, what you did wrong. You are receiving a certain amount of income and all of a sudden there's a shutdown. So you take journaling. What happened? What was the last thing you did? What was that thing you did wrong that made the finance to shut down? So prophetic journaling is very important for every believer and every Christian. So, and I'm not tying it down to just finance alone. I'm speaking widely, things going on. All of a sudden, you notice that there's something wrong that happened in family, and it's consistent. Happened to your sister, happened to your brother, happened to your dad. And then, when you take journaling, you would know where the issue is. For instance, some families that have family patterns. Maybe in a family, the daughters don't get married except they get to the age of 30. Prophetic journaling will help you to trace down the history lane, go back to, as far as grandparents if they're still alive, as far as parents if they're still alive. Try to understand what they did wrong, what your father did, what your sisters did. It will help you to know how to effectively position your own life such that whatever happened to them, you won't be a victim of it, and such that you will be able to stop that thing that is happening in the family. So prophetic journaling is important for every believer and every Christian. All right. So now, having said that, when you look at this design, let's go to the breakdown of this design. When you look at this design, you are going to see that I have the name here, prophetic journaling. And then when you look at the background, you are going to see this man looking like and I intentionally did not make use of this modern day this modern day pattern. I intentionally made use of something that looks old. So when you look at this image, you'll see this man writing with a feather and writing on something that looks like scrolls. So when you look at this place, you are going to see like 2 scrolls or 3 scrolls that are lined up here. You're going to see like 3 scrolls, and then you're going to see here that this man is currently writing on a scroll, and he's not using a biro, he's not using a pencil, he's not using a tablet. All right, he's using a feather, and this, it just communicates because it's like going back the memory lane or going back to history. All right, how it is done. All right, when you look through scriptures, you will see that there are a lot of journaling. You see that there are a lot of writings. All right, many things you know today about Jesus, many things you know today about the apostles, many things you know today about the upper room, the Pentecost. You would not be opportune to know these things if not that some persons, all right, have decided to write down, to journal. So imagine that the Bible is not written down. Imagine that the letters of Apostle Paul was just said out with the words of the mouth, and then Apostle Paul speaks to Titus, all right, and then Titus speaks to someone, and then the person speaks to the next person, and then imagine they are telling you that same information. You will discover that the quality of the information would have dropped. You will discover that the quality of the information as it came from Apostle Paul is not going to be the same quality of information that has gotten to you. So it's helped us to trace it back that right from the time of old, these men have been journaling their experiences. They've been journaling the things they've been doing. They've been journaling the words they've been receiving from God. So it helps bring back that that experience. So that is why I did not use a modern man here, a businessman like this pastor now, someone like this pastor, and then I used something like that here. If you notice, that's the reason why I didn't do that. I decided to create that impact, in our minds, that when you see this design, it takes you back, to where it began. All right, like someone said, where the beginning began. All right. So, and then making use of the feather, it further emphasizes it, and then the writings. All right, so prophetic journaling, you see here also, you see some certain scrolls, you see like 3 scrolls here again. All right, and then you see this man dressed in in this Roman, the way these Romans, the way they look. All right, and then when you look at the background also, you will see that the background has this contrast, has different colors, but these colors are blending together. All right, you can see purple here, you can see orange, and then you can see different color, you can see red, you can see yellow on this background. All the colors blending well together. It is deliberate. All right, it's intentional. All right, and then you look at night of encounter, you see the venue, you see the date, you see the time, you see the guest minister. All right, so I ensure that this design is passing the message in a complex but simple way. So it's effectively passing the message in a complex but simple way. There are kind of designs that looks complex but yet not complex, simple. It looks complex but it's not complex. All right, it's simple. So I ensure that it's deliberate and it's intentional. It's an intentional move. All right, and then one last thing I'm going to show us here before I begin to reveal the layers of this design is the guest minister. All right, so I'm going to increase the brightness of my screen right about now. Okay, yeah, so is the guest minister. Now when you look at the face of the guest minister, you're going to notice that here, this part of the guest minister here, like this, you're going to notice that it is normal. All right, while this other part looks like, sorry, I just moved that. Yeah, while this other part of the guest minister looks like it is blurry, like there's a motion blur effect. So what I did was I had 2 images of the guest minister. One is normal, no effect, while the other one I blurred, the image. I used motion blur, but then I erased a part of that motion blur. I erased this part and then I left this part. So the idea is just to give kind of beauty to the image of the guest minister. All right, just give a kind of beauty to the image of the guest minister. All right, and then when you look at this text, you're going to see prophetic journaling. So this is a normal text. All right, all I did was I did bevel and emboss, and then I did kind of blending, but the one I'm going to be revealing on this design might not be exactly like this, but it is going to be almost like this. And the reason is because I lost this file. All right, so I didn't save this file, I lost this file, and when I came back to do the tutorial, I discovered that I already lost the file, and I have already forgotten how exactly I got this particular bevel and emboss. All right, but I was able to do something close to it, but I was not able to do exactly this particular bevel and emboss. So I'm saying that to say that when we go into the tutorial, you might notice that the bevel and emboss on the prophetic journaling is slightly, all right, different from what I'm showing you right now. It's because I lost this file as at the time I was going to do this tutorial. And quick one, the resource file for this design will be available. I'll be making it available, so you can check the YouTube description, the video description. You're going to see a link to download the resource files. All right, so let's go straight into the tutorial breakdown. So the size for this design is the usual size that I make use of. So I'm going to go to image, canvas size, and it is 3000 width and 3500 for the height. Like I said, this is not a standard size. I just love making use of this size because it works best for me on my social media handles. All right, so I also colored the background. All right, I made use of this color here. This is the color code 450000. That's the color code, and then I go ahead to add this background. All right, so let me show you guys what the background looks like in the beginning. All right, so this is the background. This is what it looks like. All right, this is what it looks like. So I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see. So this is what the background looks like. You see that it's blurry. All right, so I brought this background, or I downloaded this background from Pinterest. I think I downloaded this background from Pinterest. Pinterest. Yeah. So if you are familiar with my other tutorials, you'll have heard me say that I usually get my backgrounds from Pinterest. So I downloaded this background from Pinterest, but like I usually say in my tutorials, that backgrounds from Pinterest are usually blurry. So what I will do is to add more effects on it. all right, is to add more effect on it such that it will not look as blurry as it is, when I downloaded it from the Pinterest application. So I go ahead to add certain effects on it. So, and this is the smart effect that I added. This is a smart effect. So I'm going to make the layer visible so you can see. So I added a smart effect, a filter gallery effect, and I added a lens flare also. All right, so I'm going to show you guys the effect that I added. So I added this glass effect. So in my previous tutorial, I revealed to you all how I make use of glass effect. So this is the glass effect that I added. So you go to filter gallery. So you click on your image, whatever image you want to add the effect to. You go to the top of your screen, you click on filter, and then you click on filter gallery, and then you are going to see distort and then glass, and then you click glass under distort, and then distortion I used 14. All right, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see. So this is the glass effect. I used 14. I can increase it, but it will be too much, and the smoothness is 3. All right, just 3. So that was the effect I used. And if you noticed, I also used lens flare. All right, so let me show you guys. In the middle of this background, you will notice that there's no lens flare here, but when I enable the effect, you're going to notice that there's a lens flare here. All right, so let me show you guys. I made use of a lens flare. All right, so this is it. I made use of lens flare, and the lens flare I used is brightness 100, 50 to 300 millimeter zoom, and I ensure that the lens flare was placed at the middle. All right, so you can place it any other place. You can see I'm moving the lens flare any other place you can place it, but I prefer it being in the middle. And let me just show you guys how to add lens flare. So once you click on your image, you click on filter, and you click on render. You click on render, and then you see lens flare, and then you click on lens flare, and then it brings you to this part where you put in your lens flare. So lens flare is like light effect. All right, so if you love light effects on your designs, you can make use of lens flare. So that is the first thing. Now the next thing I went ahead to do is to add a gradient map, which is this. Now remember, the background that I brought from Pinterest looks like this. All right, this is how the background looks. So but I went ahead to add a gradient map, so which is this. And let me show you guys how I created the gradient map. All right, so I'm going to double click inside of this gradient map so you can see. So this is my gradient map. This is my gradient map. The right color or the left color here, this is the color code 790C0C. All right, that's the color code. And then the other side, the color code is E80881. That's the color code. All right, so if you want to create gradient map, you can go to the bottom of your layer panel. You are going to see this icon here that says create new filter or adjustment. So once you click on it, at the top you are going to see color, you are going to see gradient, but when you go down that line, you see gradient map. It's second to the last option. All right, I know that my screen would most likely not be displaying it right now, so that's why I'm using the words of the mouth to explain what I'm doing. So you will see gradient map, and then when you click on it, it's going to pop up certain gradient map. All right, so once it pop up, all you need to do is to change the colors from this layer here. You click inside of this layer here, and you change the colors. That if you are using 2025 Photoshop. And another way you can also do it, if you don't want to do this, you can just go to the bottom of your layer. You're going to see new layer. So you click on new layer, and then you come to this part of your screen, that says gradient tool, and then you click on gradient tool, and then you create a gradient. You click on this box inside here, you choose a gradient here, and then you choose another gradient here. You increase the brightness here to the opacity here to 100, and then you drag, you draw, and then you drag up, down, or down, up, and then it's going to create a gradient field for you. Now, if you noticed, this is the gradient. This is the normal gradient I created. This is what I created. All right, this is exactly what I created. This is it. All right, this is it. All right, and then opacity is 100. Smoothness is also 100. All right, so but what I did was I worked on the blend mode. So this is normal, this is the gradient map. All right, but I changed the blend mode to soft light. So when I changed the blend mode to soft light, it allowed the background beneath it to reflect on the on my design. So that's this next thing I did. The next thing I went ahead to do is to create hue and saturation. So hue and saturation, and this is what I used. So this is the hue, you will see 27, and then other things 0, hue and saturation. So you see it's coming alive, the background is coming alive. So another designer can decide to stop here. I decided not to create hue and saturation, but there was a particular feel of the color I was anticipating, or I wanted to see. So that was what led me through all these journeys, of creating gradient map, hue and saturation, overlay, and those stuffs, So the next thing I went ahead to do is to add a background, which is this background here. All right, to add a background, let me click the background now so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to hide the smart effect. So this is what the background looks like. All right, this is what the background looks like, and I'm also going to disable the layer mask. So I downloaded this background also from Pinterest. All right, so this is what the background looks like, but I just needed the bottom part of this background. I'm not interested in this lion head, this stuff here. I'm not interested. And do not forget, guys, if you have not watched my last tutorial, the last 2 tutorials I posted on Photoshop, please do well to watch. I talked about something. I said, anytime you bring in a background from Pinterest, don't start working with that background like that, the way it is. I said manipulate things, change things, all right? It's very important, all right? So I wanted to manipulate things. You can't just bring in a designer's background in or a photographer's background in and just start using it like that. All right, so what I went ahead to do was to add a layer mask, and what I did was to erase from the lion part down to this place. I erased it. I only needed this part of the design, so I erased it. So let me enable the layer mask so you can see I erased it. And another thing again, like I said, any background you bring in from Pinterest, the background is going to be blurry. So usually what I would do is to add filter gallery glass effect. So I went ahead to add my smart filter, which is the glass effect. So when you look at the bottom of this background, you will notice that there's a glass effect here. So let me hide the smart effect. You will see what it looks like, but when I reveal the smart effect, you see the glass effect on the design. And it's the same way. You go to filter gallery, and then you click on distort, and then you click on glass. All right, so that was what I used. Now the next thing I went ahead to do is to add light. So I named it light. All right, this name here, this light here you're seeing here, it's just a name that I gave it here. All right, so but what I did was add a brush tool. So I clicked on new layer, and then I click on my brush tool. All right, so let me click on a new layer. So I click on new layer, I click on my brush tool, and then just choose a red color that blends with the manipulations you've done so far. And then I clicked OK, and then I went ahead to just place it on the design. All right, so that was exactly what I did there. That makes it looks like it's a light at the bottom here. So if I hide this layer, you see, and if I make it visible, you will see that red effect brush effect taking place here. Right, so that I just named it light. All right, so I just wanted the red to be more visible at the bottom of this design, and that was the reason why I did that. All right, so I'm going to make that visible. Now the next thing I went ahead to do is to add journal man. All right, so which is the image. So I'm going to click that journal man, which is the image. So let me show you guys what it looks like. So let me show you guys the original image. The original image is this. So this is the image. I'm going to hide the layer marks that I already created. I'm going to disable the layer marks, and then I'm going to change the blend mode to normal so that you guys can see. So this is the image, and this image I generated it from ChatGPT using AI. All right, so what I did was I asked ChatGPT, hey ChatGPT, create a prompt for me. I want to create an image of an ancient man, or a Roman man, writing, journaling, using scroll, writing, using feather. something like that. So this is just a rough sketch of what I told ChatGPT. I couldn't get the prompt. I would have pasted it so that we can make use of it. So that was what I told ChatGPT. So ChatGPT created a prompt for me. Then I copied the prompt ChatGPT created and I pasted it back in ChatGPT, and I told ChatGPT to generate the image. So because sometimes when you tell ChatGPT that generate an image for me with this man, this, sometimes ChatGPT will do something that is not cool. So what I usually do is tell ChatGPT that you want to generate an image. ChatGPT generate a prompt for me. ChatGPT is good at generating prompts. So when ChatGPT generates the prompt, you copy the prompt, then you paste it back on ChatGPT, then tell it to generate the image. You go ahead to generate the image. So that was how I generated this image here that we are seeing here. So that's what the image looked like. So what I now went ahead to do was to erase these sharp parts, right? Because this part can't be on the design like this. This part can't just stay on this design like this. So I went ahead to add a layer mask, enable layer mask, and using my gradient tool, I blended this to the background. Then I went ahead to create to change the effect to color dodge. All right, the blend mode, to color dodge. So if you notice at the top here, you see the blend mode. I used the color dodge. So this is normal, this is dissolve, other blend mode, but I used color dodge for it. All right, now when I use color dodge, if you notice, the image was not visible enough. The man's face was not visible enough. So what I needed to do was to duplicate what I've done. So you can see this is another duplicate, and then this is also another duplicate. So when I duplicated the image 3 times, you can now see that the image is now visible enough. So that was what I did for the journal man. Now let's go ahead. I added the minister's image, which is this image here. All right, so this is this image here, and I also added certain camera raw filter, because when I brought in the image was looking too casual. I will not use the word casual, that shouldn't be the word to use, but the image was looking wasn't looking exactly how I wanted it, the effect on the face. So I went ahead to add camera raw filter on the image. So let me show you guys the effect of camera raw filter. So you can see camera raw filter ensures that the tone of the skin now blends well with the background. So this is the before camera raw filter, and this is the after camera raw filter, and I'm going to show you guys the camera raw filter effects. So I made use of light 0.3, contrast -13, shadow -16, white -100, and then blacks 58. And I also made use of texture +76, clarity +7, the haze +26. All right, so those are the things I made use of for the camera raw filter. So you can see it, camera raw filter. So if you are using CS4, Photoshop CS4 or Photoshop CS6, you most likely not have camera raw filter on your Photoshop, and that's because you are using the previous versions of Photoshop. All right, but if you are using CC 2020, 2025, 2023, you should find camera raw filter under the filter gallery. So when you go to filter, you're going to see camera raw filter. So but if you don't have camera raw filter on the version of your Photoshop, it's okay, you don't have to bother, just work with the image that way. All right, so the next thing I went ahead to do was to add the second image of the minister. But remember, when I was giving the breakdown of this design, I said I created 2 images of the minister. I said one was without motion blur, but the second was with motion blur. So if you notice, this is the title, minister image blurred. So this is the part where I blurred the minister's image. All right, so let me disable the layer marks. So let me show you guys what I did. So it's the same image, I duplicated the image, but what I went ahead to do was to add smart filter. And what I did was I used the blur gallery. All right, I added smart filter, and then you use motion blur. So you go to filter, you go to blur, and then you go to blur, and then you go to motion blur. All right, so let me do that. So I'm going to disable the smart filter like there was no filter. So this is the image, right? So I'm going to click on filter, I'm going to blur, and I'm going to click motion blur. So I'm going to click motion blur. Now when you click motion blur, it's automatically going to blur the image because if you look at this place, it's showing that the blur is going to take place from top to bottom. So, but I want it to take place from the left to the right, or from the right to the left, as you call it. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click here. Yeah, or you can hold your shift and click here. So it's going to be on angle 0. So if you notice, it's now from right to left or from left to right. All right, so once you do that, you click OK. Now the next thing you now go ahead to do after doing that, let me delete this layer mask. All right, so let me click another layer mask. So add layer mask to this image. The next thing you go ahead to do after doing that is to now erase the part you want to erase out of this your image. You erase the part you want to erase out of your image. Remember I said I only allowed this part of the image to be blurred, and this part I did not allow it to be blurred. So how did I do that? I'm going to click on the eraser tool. Remember I already created the layer mask, and then click on the eraser tool, soft eraser tool. All right, make sure it's soft. This is too hard. Let me see if it should be hard. No, it's too hard. So if you notice, it's too hard. All right, so I'm going to click on soft, click on hardness 0, size maybe 480. Remember, click on soft brush, and then you brush softly. So can you see this, guys? So as you brush softly, the parts that you don't want to be blur would go away, and the part you did not erase will remain. So can you see this, guys? So when you look at this image, you will notice that this part, let me take this up, this part is blurry, but this part is not blurry. So that was the effect I used for the guest minister. All right, so that's how to achieve that. It's very easy. The next thing I have to do is to add my call to action, which is my venue. All right, so I created a rectangle shape, a line shape, and then I used the font I used for my date is, I'm going to click the font layer, is Montserrat bold for the 5 p.m. and then for the Friday I made use of also Montserrat bold, but I reduced the size. And then for the venue, for the Grace Light Center, if you noticed, I used this particular color. You can pick the color from here. All right, this particular color, FFBB3C. All right, and then I made use of the Montserrat bold. All right, but for the other text I made use of Montserrat medium. Right, so that was how I achieved that. All right, and the next thing I went ahead to do is to add the church logo. So I might not be giving you guys the church logo. You can just come up with any fictional logo for this design. All right, so I went ahead to add the church name and the church logo. And then the next thing I went ahead to do is to add the name of the guest minister, which is Reverend Sam Ayo. And then I went ahead to add a lens flare. All right, a light effect. All right, so the idea behind this lens flare, I downloaded this lens flare. All right, so let me show you guys what it looks like. So I'm going to click, I'm going to unlock the layer. So let me hide all effects that I made use of in this lens flare. So the lens flare usually comes like an image. So let me go back to normal. So this is the way the lens flare looks like an image. All right, so but when you bring it in, you can either change it to screen. So when you change it to screen, it automatically removes the black background. So but what I did, I changed it to linear dodge. All right, I didn't use screen, I changed it to linear dodge. You can either use screen or use linear dodge. So I changed my own to linear dodge, and then I went ahead to add enable layer mask. And the reason behind enable the layer mask is because when you change it to screen or linear dodge, the edges of the background will still be reflecting on the design. So what you need to do is to add a layer mask, and you click on your gradient tool and you click on transparent. Your gradient tool should be transparent, like this, black and transparent, and then you erase those softly, the edges of the background, so that it won't reflect on the design. All right, so that was the idea behind this. And I also added Gaussian blur to this effect because, like I said, I downloaded this light or this lens flare. I downloaded it from, I think, Pinterest or so. So it was looking blurry. It wasn't looking exactly cool. You can see. So I added, remember I said anytime you download something from the internet and it looks blurry, you need to do your own blur effect again on Photoshop so that it will look perfect. So I added my own Gaussian blur, and that was how I achieved the lens flare. And I also added hue and saturation. So the idea behind the hue and saturation is the lens flare, the color, I needed it to blend very well with the color of the design. So I added hue and I added saturation. And the next thing I went ahead to do is to add the theme, which is Knights of Encounter, and I used the font Montserrat semi-bold, and then I went ahead to add the title, which is Prophetic Journaling, which is where I'm going to talk about the font, what I did for the font and all. So let me start with this first one, Prophetic. All right, so the font I used is this font called Impact. So you can download it on download it online. Just type Impact font, you're going to see it. Download Impact font, you're going to see it. So this is the font I used, and it is Impact Regular. Now I added some effect to the font that when you look at this effect, you're going to see bevel and emboss, and also drop shadow. So I added bevel and emboss. I'm going to show you guys the value of the bevel and emboss. So depth 63, size 109, and then all other things remains constant. All right, and then it's inner bevel I used, not outer bevel. If you see outer bevel, it's going to change the way it looks. So I used inner bevel. And my technique is smooth. All right, smooth. So the next thing I also did was I added shadow. So if you look at the shadow, the blend mode is multiply, the opacity is 36, and then distance is 31, spread is 22, and then size is 40. So these are the values I used for the prophetic. All right, so now I went ahead also to add, I'm going to close this up. I went ahead also to add the journaling, which is a text. So let me show you guys the color I used for the prophetic. So this is the color. The color is FFC F4F. All right, that's the color I used for prophetic. All right, and if you notice the blend mode for this prophetic, I used linear light. It's not normal. So this is what normal would look like, but I changed it to linear light. Can you see, guys? Now let's go to the journaling. The journaling also, the color I used for journaling, let me check out this journaling. The color I used for journaling is this color, FFC F4F. All right, same color. I changed the blend mode of this to linear dodge. So if you look at what it looks like, this is the normal color, but I changed it to linear dodge. All right, linear dodge. And also I added drop shadow, same value here, 31, 22, 40, 36. All right, now I went ahead again to add another layer of journaling, another text layer of journaling, which gives us this. So let me show you guys what the next journaling looks like. So this is it. The blend mode is not linear dodge now, it is pin light. So you can see it's pin light. So this is what the normal looks like, but this is what the pin light looks like. So remember I said that I literally I misplaced this file, so trying to get the exact, so let me show you guys what the exact bevel and emboss I used looks like. So this is the exact bevel and emboss. This is the design. All right, so but I couldn't get that exact bevel and emboss, and so I decided to create something similar to it. All right, so something similar to it. So you can see the second journaling, the bevel and emboss I used is 355 128. So that was what I used, and with this we are done with the breakdown of this design. So when you look at this design, you notice the alignment from left to right, top to bottom. Everything aligns and talks about the theme of this design. All right, guys, I hope you learned something from the breakdown of this design. And like I said, I'm going to make the resource files of this design available so that you can practice and do something nice. And please, guys, do well to drop a comment, do well to drop a like if you enjoyed this video. And I look forward to seeing you guys in my next tutorial. Thank you so much, guys, for staying till the end of this design. If you haven't subscribed, please do well to subscribe. See you guys in my next tutorial.